Hello everyone, welcome back to Myth and Magic. We have discussed in our previous video original fairies, and as we learned in this last video, original fairies means hundreds, thousands of fairies, and even more when you're adding in other cultural versions of fairies. So this video is story time. Story time. We've got some stories. We have 4 stories, and hopefully you enjoy them. Again, if you have a fairy that you would like to do a deep dive in, some of them might not have a whole lot of information on, so maybe a couple, or if you only give me one and I find, oh, there's not a whole lot here, I'll find another one to pair it with. It'll be great. Okay, so grab your drinky drinks. You have a crown? Put that on. Put that crown on your head. It is fairy time. Get fairy. Okay, let's get fairy. Now, also if you want your cozy socks, put those on. It's too hot for me right now. It's too hot. All right, we're starting. Story 1. The Seelie Court. The Fairy Banquet at Friendship. For our first tale, we are traveling to Surrey, England, to a place called Borough Hill. Now, if you looked at it today, you just see a massive ancient earthen mound covered in grass. But centuries ago, the locals knew it as a seat of the Seelie Court. The fairies of Borough Hill were the epitome of what we think of when we imagine the courtly fae. They were elegant, aristocratic, and fiercely proud. But most importantly, they operated under a strict law of compensation and absolute politeness. They didn't mind interacting with humans, but everything had to be a perfect transaction. The local folklore states that if a human was hosting a massive event, like a wedding feast or a christening, and they didn't have the grand tableware to impress their guests, they could walk right up to Borough Hill. You had to knock on the earth, state exactly what you need, and promise a precise day and time you would return it. One afternoon, a local man was planning a massive feast. Wanting to impress the parish, he walked up to the mound, took off his hat, and politely knocked. "Good neighbors," he said, "I am hosting a great gathering and require a large cooking cauldron. I swear upon my honor to return it clean and whole by noon on the day after the feast." He waited. For a moment, there was nothing but the wind. Then, with a heavy grinding sound, a small fissure opened in the hillside. Out slid a magnificent, massive cauldron crafted from fine, polished metal. No hands were holding it. It was simply offered. The feast was a grand success, and the cauldron was the talk of the village. But as the days passed, the human looked at the beautiful vessel and grew greedy. He thought about how useful it would be to keep, or how much money he could get for selling it. He let the deadline slip. Noon came and went on the promised day, and the cauldron sat firmly in his kitchen. Eventually, a sudden run of terrible luck hit his farm. His milk soured instantly, his livestock grew restless, and an overwhelming sense of dread filled his home. Realizing he had insulted the Seelie Court, he frantically cleaned the cauldron, hauled it back to Borough Hill, and knocked. He apologized profusely and left the cauldron on the grass. But the hillside remained tightly shut. There was no grinding stone, no opening. The fairies refused to touch it. By breaking his word, he had permanently broken the transaction. The fairies left him with the cauldron, but they attached a quiet, generational curse of misfortune to his household for his bad manners. The village eventually took the cauldron away to keep the curse from spreading, and they placed it inside Frensham Church. If you visit Surrey today, you can still see it sitting there, a physical record of what happens when you break a promise to the Seelie Court. I want to go to London and I want to see this cauldron. Do you not want to see this cauldron? I want to go so bad. This is now a bucket list item of mine. Story 2. Redcap. Redcap didn't have wings, and he wasn't a tiny, mischievous pixie. Traditional lore describes him as a thick, grotesque old man with long, yellow fangs, glowing red eyes, and sharp, eagle-like talons for hands. He wore heavy iron boots that clanked loudly against the stone, and on his head sat a dingy gray wool cap. Redcap offered Solis a dark covenant. He gave the Lord supernatural protection. Ordinary weapons would bend against Suli's skin, and the hemp ropes would instantly snap if anyone tried to bind him. But the Unseelie do nothing for free. The price for his protection was a continuous supply of human blood. Redcap lived in the shadows of the castle's foundations, and he was fiercely predatory. He didn't wait for humans to offend him. He hunted them for sport and survival. Any traveler, lost soul, or wandering peasant who crossed into the castle grounds after dark became his prey. Redcap would ambush them from the parapets, striking them down with a heavy iron pike. Once the victim was unalived, Redcap would remove his dingy cap, dip it into the fresh, wet blood until the fabric was completely soaked in a brilliant crimson red. According to the lore, Redcap's life force was bound to that blood. If his cap ever dried out completely, he would wither away and perish. The local peasants endured years of terror, watching loved ones disappear into the castle shadows. Eventually, the locals revolted. They knew ordinary weapons couldn't kill Lord Solis because of the fairy's magic, so they ambushed the Lord, wrapping him in a massive, heavy sheet of lead, and dragged him to a giant cauldron. With Lord Solis gone, the dark pact broke. Robin Redcap let out a hideous, echoing shriek that shook the castle stones, turned into a black vapor, and vanished into the ruins. To this day, local legends say that if you stand near the crumbling walls of Hermitage Castle at night, you can still hear the slow, rhythmic clinking of iron boots against the stone, waiting for the cap to dry. Story 3. The Alternative Fae, the Sulky Wife of Unst. Our next narrative takes us away from the courts entirely and out to the lonely, wind-swept shores of the Shetland Islands to a remote place called Unst. This is the realm of the solitary nature spirits, specifically the Selkies. A lonely fisherman named Herman was walking along the rocky shore by moonlight, checking his nets. As he rounded a high cliff, he heard the sound of beautiful, ethereal laughter. He crept closer and peered over the rocks. There on the silver sand, a group of breathtakingly beautiful men and women were dancing. They looked human, but their skin seemed to glow under the moon. A few yards away, laid out on a flat rock, were several dark, glossy sealskins. Herman instantly realized he was looking at Selkies, the marine fae who live as seals in the deep ocean, but shed their skins to walk and dance as humans on land. Herman stepped on a loose stone. The sound shattered the music. The Selkies panicked, rushing toward the flat rock. They scooped up their skins, slipped them on in a blur of movement, and dove back into the crashing waves as sleek seals. But Herman was fast. Before the last dancer could reach the rock, he lunged forward and snatched her sealskin. The dancer was a stunningly beautiful woman. Without her skin, she could not transform, and she could not return to the ocean. She stood on the sand, shivering and weeping, begging him to give it back. But Herman, captivated by her beauty and tired of his lonely life, refused. He hid the skin deep inside the thatched roof of his cottage and coaxed her into becoming his wife. Years passed. The Selkie woman lived as a human. She was a good wife, and she bore Herman several children. To the neighbors, she seemed normal, though she never spoke much and spent every spare moment standing on the cliffs, staring out at the open ocean with an alien, profound sadness. She belonged to the wild sea, not the cramped world of humans. One afternoon, while Herman was out at sea fishing, the children were playing in the loft. They knocked a bundle loose from the thatch, and out fell a smooth, heavy, silver-gray hide. Excited, they brought it down to show their mother. The moment her hands touched the skin, the human illusion shattered. Her true nature returned. She didn't hesitate, she didn't pack, and she didn't wait for Herman. She kissed her children tightly, ran from the cottage, and raced down to the rocky shore. Herman's boat was just pulling into the bay when he saw her sprint to the edge of the cliff. She slipped the glossy skin over her shoulders and dove into the waves. A large male sea rose from the water to meet her. As they swam out into the deep Atlantic, she looked back at Herman one last time. She shouted across the water that she loved her human children, but she loved her freedom and her true home more. She dove beneath the surface and was never seen again. Our last story, The Changeling of Treva, The Dark Side of the Cradle. For our final tale, we look at the exact moment where the traditional fairy, the beautiful, elegant, small fae we think we know, crosses paths with pure, calculated malice. We are traveling to a small, isolated cottage in Treva, Cornwall. A young mother had just given birth to a beautiful, healthy baby boy. In those days, a newborn child was a beacon to the fae. The mother knew the old warnings, but one afternoon, exhausted from the harvest, she fell into a deep sleep by the hearth, leaving the cradle unguarded for just an hour. In that hour, the traditional fae arrived. They didn't have wings, but they were breathtakingly beautiful, small, sharp-featured, and wearing clothes spun from green silk. They were the trooping fae, looking exactly like the elegant creatures of fairy tales. But their intent was cruel. They wanted the vibrant, healthy human child to strengthen their own bloodlines. Silently, they lifted the human baby from the blankets and replaced him with one of their own, a changeling. When the mother woke, she knew instantly that something was wrong. Her baby looked roughly the same, but his eyes had changed. They were ancient, hollow, and cold. The child, who had been sweet and quiet, began to cry a piercing, unceasing shriek that filled the cottage day and night. Months passed, and the child did not grow. He became withered, his skin turned a sickly gray, and he possessed an insatiable, ravenous hunger, consuming whole loaves of bread and gallons of milk while remaining entirely skeletal. Desperate and terrified, the mother sought the help of a local wise man. He told her the brutal truth. That is not your son. It is an old, withered fairy left to drain your life and your resources. To get your real child back, you must force the fae to trade. The wise men gave her a specific, bizarre ritual to break the fairy's illusion. The next morning, the mother gathered 12 empty eggshells, filled them with water, and lined them up carefully on the hearth. She began to stir them with a tiny twig, pretending to brew a massive feast. From the cradle, the sickly child stopped crying. He sat up, his eyes wide with an ancient adult intelligence. In a cracked, booming voice that no human baby could ever possess, the creature spoke. I have lived for 300 years, and I have seen the acorn before the oak, but I have never seen a cook brew beer in eggshells. Having trapped the creature into revealing its true age, the mother immediately took the next terrifying step to reclaim her son. She grabbed the changeling, marched out to the crossroads, and held the creature over a roaring fire, threatening to drop it. The unseelie nature of the changeling's magic broke. Instantly, a rushing wind swept through the crossroads, and the beautiful green-clad trooping fae appeared out of the mist. They let out a furious hiss, angry that their trick had been discovered. With a flick of their hands, they snatched the withered fairy back into the spirit world and dumped the true, healthy human baby onto the soft grass, whole and unharmed. It is a stark reminder from original lore. Even the most beautiful, traditional fairies view humanity as nothing more than a resource to be stolen. And those are our stories. There is one thing I did not recommend that I should have in the last video, but I'm going to do it now. Okay, if you go on to Spotify, you can type in Changeling for a song, but the one that I want to direct you to is Changeling by Ella Harp. She also has some other beautiful music, and I would recommend, and I'm going to do this, listen to the other Changeling fae songs. They are beautiful and eerie and really kind of cool. They tell a story, and hopefully you enjoyed these stories. Our next video will hopefully be about the trooping fae specifically. If you have any other fae you would like for me to discuss with you, let me know. But other than that, we're done. And I hope that you enjoy these stories. I hope you're having a good time. Please be kind. Please be a light in this world. I'm going to encourage that so that we can all find happiness. We truly need it. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next time.